What's up, everyone? Grayson the Dean 221 Nichols, as always, here on the Elite Rounders YouTube channel. And we are going over the newest episode and new series on Poker After Dark, the Blitz Show, which is basically Dan Bilzerian's friends, fellow home game members, and they're playing on Poker After Dark now. So, as many of you know, Dan Bilzerian, very polarizing figure in the poker community. It's going to be interesting to watch him play some hands. He has claimed to has built most of his fortune from poker. Somewhat dubious about that claim. We'll be doing a little investigative reporting on that later on eventually, but for now, let's talk about some poker. And then even before that, I want to remind you guys about a little giveaway we're doing here at Elite Rounders. So if you go ahead and subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, and then post in the comments of this video your Instagram name, we will enter you into a raffle for a month of free group poker coaching at Elite Rounders. So again, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram at Elite Rounders, and then post in the comments your name on Instagram. We'll enter you into that raffle. We'll be doing this for about a month, and we'll pick a winner at the end of the month. So tune in and keep your eyes peeled for that. So back to the Poker After Dark episode here. I'll be honest, the episode was a little underwhelming. The play wasn't as exciting as I had hoped. Got several celebrities here, some musicians. Bilzerian, the influencer, the billionaire Bill Perkins. We got looks like Mr. Eubank here, I believe, professional boxer or fighter. So interesting lineup. The action was somewhat subdued, and I'll be honest, Bilzerian actually played pretty well. I kind of was hoping that he wasn't going to do great, and we'd get to kind of criticize some of his plays, but I think he played pretty solid for the most part. So we'll be keeping an eye on how he plays, and hopefully get to look at one of his hands next week. But to be honest, all of his hands were pretty straightforward. So nothing too noteworthy to discuss there. But there was this one hand that I really wanted to chat with you guys about, and most notably, I kind of wanted to talk about when to try to call bluffs on the river. I think it's a situation where people get a little overwhelmed sometimes, and they, look at the board texture and they kind of forget about their opponent's range and the perception of what it looks like they have, and they just get caught up in the moment, caught up on the board, caught up with their cards. So I really want to focus a little bit on river strategy when it comes to trying to call bluffs. So in this game, like a lot of the high stakes games, they're playing the deuce to seven game. And for those of you who don't know what the deuce to seven game is, if you win a pot with deuce seven, and then you show everyone afterward, they all have to pay you X amount of dollars. In the high stakes poker episodes we've been watching, again, check out our videos on Thursday. We're always doing a recap of those. It's very common that they run this deuce to seven game, right? Typically it's $1,000, maybe even $2,000 from each player. So it adds a new dynamic to the game, right? When there's a chance that you get $1,000 from everyone if you win this, so people start to bluff more with deuce seven. Makes some interesting hands and some polarized ranges. So in this game, I believe they were doing $300 a head. So if you did win with deuce to seven, you get an extra $2,000 or so from the table. So it's certainly something people are going for. The game is 5,100. Everyone's sitting with around 25,000 on average. And the following hand happened. So Eubanks goes ahead and opens here for 400 with ace jack of spades, and Bell is on the button with the old 7-deuce hammer. He goes ahead and 3-bets to 1,400, to which Eubank makes a standard call. So, the hand gets a little interesting in a bit. The flop comes out queen, queen, 6, okay? And Eubank, of course, checks with his ace high, and this is where it gets a little weird. Bell decided to check back as well. I found that very strange, but it's kind of interesting. It's kind of cool, and we'll get to that in a second. So he checks on the queen, queen, 6. So keep in the back of your mind, like, what is he repping by doing that, right? The turn comes out of 6, as you see here with the full board in front of us. And Eubank checks again, and this time, Bell goes ahead and fires out a little bet, right? The river then comes out an ace, and now Eubank bets 3,000, okay? So this is where Bell springs the trap, and this is where the perception comes into play. He now goes ahead and raises it up to 9,000, right? So it's a weird spot, you know, like what is he repping? That's the first thing that is really important. I think we need to ask ourselves, like, what is Bell trying to rep here? And if we go back to the flop where he checked the queen, well, I think now he's making a very compelling case that he did have a queen and that he was slow playing the queen on the flop, right? So suddenly, when he raises this river, it looks like he could have a queen. He could have queens full, and he could very well have a pocket aces for the nuts, right? Because he would maybe check the flop for pot control and deception with the aces, and then he gets there in the river, right? So what I really want to discuss with you guys is not so much Bell's bluff here, right? But more I want to look at Eubank's spot when he is forced to have to make this call, right? So Bell made it 8,400, as you can see here, and now it's 5,400 to Eubank to call. Well, first of all, you see he's getting somewhere around 3-to-1 odds, so he just needs to be right 1 out of 3 times here. And that's really not the first thing I want you to notice. I think what you need to do in these spots is, again, separate yourself. Don't just be like, I have ace jack, I have the ace, and it's a scary board. He can have a queen, he can have a 6, right? Let's think about this for a second. Would Bell ever play a 6 this way? Probably not. He's probably not 3-betting with a lot of 6s on the button. And then he might not even raise this river, right? He might just call the 3,000, right? It seems very questionable when Eubank could easily have the queen. So I think it's a spot where, Bell basically has a queen or he's bluffing, right? So the way you should approach these spots, okay? You start off by saying, what is the worst hand my opponent would raise for value here, right? So if I'm in Eubank's seat, I would say, what's the worst hand the Bell would raise me for value here? I bet 3K, he makes it 8,500. What's he doing this with? What's the worst hand he would do this with for value? Like I said, it's dubious he would do it with a 6, but a 6 doesn't fit his range for 3-betting preflop, right? So the next thing I would say is, would he do this with ace-king, right? Well, I don't think so. I think with ace-king, he would also be worried that Eubank could possibly have a queen, right? So if he can't have an ace-king, he's unlikely to have a 6. Well, to me, this means that Bell has a queen or he's bluffing. There's nothing in between, right? And especially in a game where the deuce to 7 game is live, I think you're going to have to end up calling a lot in these spots to keep your opponents honest. Because if they're polarized between total bluffs or the nuts, and the nuts can only be one of the 2 queens that's out there essentially, I think you're going to find a lot of bluffs in these spots, especially with the deuce to 7 game going, right? So this needs to be a situation where you're like, what is the worst hand he raised for value here? Probably just a queen. And then the next question you ask yourself is, what kind of bluffs could he have, right? That's where it's a little tricky, because I think when he checks the flop, a lot of his total junk hands would have maybe bet the flop and tried to stab at it. So he doesn't have many bluffs here either, right? Like that's what's kind of confusing. Maybe he had something like a king jack suited, king 10 suited that checked back with a backdoor flush draw on the flop, and then took a stab on the turn, and then is trying to make a move on the river. But again, those are kind of, that's a little optimistic bias, right? So to me, this is a spot where I believe Eubank should fold his hand if there was no deuce to 7 game going on, because there's not a lot of bluffs he could have. But now knowing that the deuce to 7 game is going on, that's squarely in his bluff range, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Without it, though, I think this would be an interesting spot to go ahead and fold, perhaps, right? I think Eubank played pretty well in this game. It's cool to see professional fighters getting out there in the poker streets and mixing it up and playing well. And he goes ahead and makes the call here and makes a good call, wins a big pot. I think it's a really interesting spot where, again, I want to just work with you guys and help you guys out a little bit. Like, obviously, we're watching these hands for fun and stuff, but I want to help you guys in your game, too. And I think the most important thing to take from this is that when you get to the river and someone has made a big bet or raised you, say to yourself, what's the worst thing they would do this with for value? What does their bluff range look like? What kind of odds am I getting? If you work through those 3 questions, it's really going to help your process when you're out there trying to make a hero call on the river. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, don't forget about our giveaway this month. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us at Elite Rounders on Instagram. Post your Instagram name in the comments, and we'll enter you into a raffle to get a free month of poker coaching. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Tune in for our next video, which should be part 2 of the duel with Negreanu and Hellmuth. I'm really stoked to do that again. Got a lot of good feedback from you guys and a lot of Hellmuth people coming after me in the chats, which I got love for all you guys. It was a ton of fun reading that stuff. So really excited for that next video to come out soon. So keep an eye on that, and we'll see you next time. Good luck this week, guys.